Hi, it's me, another commentary YouTuber making a face in the thumbnail like you just ate his dog in front of him. The Chosen is a streaming series about the life of Jesus created by Dallas Jenkins. It's the first multi-season series about the subject, and as of now, 5 out of a planned 7 seasons have been released. Now, I made a video about this series 3 years ago where I explained that in sharp contrast to most other Christian media, I was actually entertained by it. It's by far the most I've ever been invested in an on-screen depiction of Jesus, and probably the most I've been invested in a piece of Christian media in general, barring like Narnia and the Prince of Egypt. Do keep in mind though that most other Christian media sets a pretty low bar, so like anything that doesn't feature a scene of a Muslim father physically abusing his daughter for converting to Christianity.
Say it! I command you to say it!
No, Mama, Jesus is my Lord and Savior, and He died to save me from my sins.
No!
Is gonna impress me. But in the time since my first video about The Chosen, I've realized I have a lot more to say about it, especially considering that 2 more seasons have been released in that time. And with those, I think my opinions of the show overall have gotten a little more complicated. Which isn't to say I don't still like it. Everything I liked about it before, I still do. The acting, cinematography, costumes, set design, and score are all top-notch. The characters are memorable and likable. I love the theme song.
Whoa. In the water, God knows how best you've been. Walk on the water.
And even the writing, I'd say, is still good. It's just that especially now in the back half of the series, things are starting to feel a little drawn out. Which is inevitable when you're stretching the 10 or so hours it would take to read every single word of the Gospels into 7 8-episode seasons of TV. But even including everything about Jesus from the Bible, to have enough material for this long of a show still requires them to have to make up a lot of story. You know, to add to the existing story, no part of which is made up. But again, to the writer's credit, a lot of what they add is really good. Mainly the backstories and characterization for all of Jesus' disciples, most of which aren't present in the Bible. Like before this show, based on my one complete read-through of the Bible in college and all the other Jesus media I've seen, I could never really differentiate the disciples from each other in my mind. Besides obviously Judas and then Simon Peter as the ones supposedly guarding heaven's gates. Speaking of which, if heaven is real and operates exactly like that, I can't wait to walk up to Peter as he's got a smug look on his face that says, "I've seen all your videos making fun of Christians movies, buddy. We both know where you're going." But then I'll ask him to check his list where he discovers that checkmate, bitch, my great-grandparents wanted me baptized. So if you could kindly just point me in the direction of my grandpa's poker game with Stan Lee, I don't know. And yeah, I still say bitch for comedic effect sometimes. It's called dark woke, look it up. But thanks to this show, I now have distinct characterizations, backstories, and actors to associate with all the disciples and the other supporting characters of the Gospels. Which really shouldn't come as a surprise, as the show's title of The Chosen is referring to them. The fleshing out of their characters also makes it really resonate when some of them die. Like John the Baptist and Lazarus. Well, wait, never mind on that last one. Then some characters are given new storylines where their faith is tested. Like Thomas, whose fiancée Rama, an original character to the show and fellow follower of Christ, is killed by the Roman centurion Quintus. Then when Jesus brings Lazarus back to life despite refusing to do so for Rama, the grieving Thomas feels betrayed. Then Peter also has a similar arc, nearly losing his faith in Jesus after his wife has a miscarriage. And obviously, both characters ultimately forgive Jesus and continue trusting in him, which, you know, maybe not the most satisfying resolution, but the kind I expect from this show. Speaking of Peter, season 4 is where Jesus changes his name to that from Simon. And it's honestly really cute seeing how dedicated all his buddies are to not dead-naming him.
Peter.
Am I pronouncing that right?
I have it written down here. Someone brought it to my attention.
Ah, close. It's a little softer.
Peter? Peter?
You're a seafaring man.
And honestly, just in general, the tender physical way all the male characters in this series show affection to one another is really refreshing. Almost Lord of the Rings-esque. Thaddeus is depicted as Jesus' first disciple in the show. The season 5 finale actually opens with a scene that I really like that flashes back to Jesus first recruiting him. You can tell it's a flashback because Jesus is wearing a head wrap. This is back in his head wrap phase. But they meet while constructing a latrine together. And Jesus starts out by explaining that despite their hard work on it, in a few centuries it'll be as if the structure never existed.
Yes, this very fine public amenity we're building.
In a few thousand years, no one will even know it existed.
Or that we existed.
Well,
Not gonna lie, that moment was pretty cool, because in the world of this series, Jesus knows the truth that both of them are gonna be remembered millennia later, as evidenced by the very show we as the audience are watching. They also give Judas much more of a motivation for betraying Jesus than is provided in the Bible. Here, he wants Jesus to fulfill his specific interpretation of the Messiah as like a military leader who will violently overthrow Rome, and believes that Jesus' arrest will force him to finally become that.
We take him at his word, and it's literal, and he's delivered up. But in that hour, because he is all powerful, he evades death. With the almighty capabilities we've witnessed him to possess. And that moment we have all waited for finally occurs. He will strike down his enemies and usher in the Messianic age.
And I'm pretty sure that interpretation of Judas has existed among theologians before this show, but I still like that they included it. Makes him a much more complex, tragic character. They also released this weird promo video of Judas and Jesus' actors having an axe throwing competition in character.
I guess it just wasn't my day. It almost never is.
it's not the worst of the incidents to come.
It's not? It gets worse?
Well, rope burns are what you should worry about.
I can't lie, that's kind of funny. In addition to fleshing out the supporting characters of the Gospels, the show also occasionally shows us key moments in the lives of Old Testament figures, like Isaac, David, Moses, I'm pretty sure. And some of those are more memorable than others, but one I really liked was also in season 5, where Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane. He knows he's about to be arrested and has a vision of Abraham and Isaac. And remembering that story of a man about to sacrifice his own son only for God to spare the boy is what ultimately inspires him to pray to his father that his life is spared.
Could there be another way? You spared Isaac. Let this pass from me.
Seeing that was honestly the first time I've ever drawn that parallel between Isaac and Jesus, as both sons to be sacrificed by their fathers. But commenters will always accuse me of hating Christianity and religion in general, and that's not true. I just don't like it being used to justify legislation or bigotry. But I can still appreciate the cool scenes in these stories that have resonated with people for centuries, man. However, not all the new scenes this show adds to the story had me equally invested. Like, a lot of scenes are focused on the Pharisees.
But if you say from man, the people will stone us to death because they are convinced that John was a prophet.
We can't win.
I am not getting stoned to
Can't relate. As they become aware of Jesus and ultimately decide they want to work with Rome to have him killed. And I think these scenes suffer from something a lot of remakes and prequels do, where the audience knowing what ultimately happens to the characters kills the suspense a little. But even more so here, because like some people watching the Star Wars prequels might not know that Anakin becomes Darth Vader, but I expect that almost everyone watching the Jesus show knows at least the broad strokes of what's gonna happen. And sometimes this can work for the show's benefit. Like the scenes of Judas and Jesus getting along, for example, have a tragic undertone knowing how that relationship ultimately unfolds. But for me personally, it made it so during most of the scenes with the Pharisees and the Romans, knowing they're ultimately gonna kill Jesus, I started dozing a little. I started dozing on The Chosen. Then in seasons 4 and 5 especially, there are times where the characters start to sound a little too much like exposition machines, explaining things in a lot more detail detail than I think a person realistically would, especially in regard to like ancient Jewish stories and traditions that many viewers of the show probably aren't familiar with.
They only found enough uncontaminated oil to light the temple menorah to burn for 1 day. But miraculously, it burned for 8 nights, giving them enough time to produce a new batch of pure oil. That is why we celebrate this feast of dedication for 8 days.
And while part of me thinks it's cool that they do that, so like they've been releasing the show in theaters 3 episodes at a time before they go to streaming, right?
Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's popped corn, nor their sweet morsels, nor their bubbling brew.
And I don't know, I thought it would be fun to go to one of them for season 5. And this show is very cinematic, so a lot of it didn't feel out of place in a movie theater. But there were some scenes where they gave like detailed explanations of Passover traditions.
So here's the thing, a sacrificial animal cannot be purchased with foreign currency, bearing the image of a pagan deity.
I'm sorry. It must be exchanged for an acceptable form of Hebrew payment with the proper weight and purity.
And seeing those scenes in a movie theater definitely reminded me, right, this isn't a movie, it's a TV show with ample screen time to spare. For scenes like that, and one of John being denied entry to a temple for having a wet dream.
That you have not in the past 7 days touched a corpse, touched a mole, mouse, or lizard, had a seminal discharge in your sleep, been diagnosed with leprosy, or eaten unclean foods.
I'm sure I have no idea which one of those disqualified you. These old men, punishing us for having bodies.
Truly a vital moment in the story of Christ. So yeah, the show's starting to feel a little drawn out. But in addition to that, there's something else that's been affecting my enjoyment of it since I made my first video on it, which is that it's getting harder to ignore that this show is ultimately Christian propaganda. And that's not speculation. The creator and actors have not been shy about that. That their goal with this show is to strengthen people's relationship with Christ.
Our operating principle when we first set out to make it was, if you can see Jesus through the eyes of those who actually met him, you can be changed and impacted in the same way they were. If you can identify with the same questions, doubts, struggles that they did, then you can identify with the answer to their struggles, their questions, and their doubts. That people, when they watch the show, are still seeing Jesus through the eyes of those who met him and are experiencing the same change that those people did, and that they can realize that the Jesus of 2,000 years ago is the same Jesus who wants a relationship with you now.
Which, look, is not an inherently sinister thing. Historically, Christianity has been a force for both good and bad. And if you're a person who believes it can be a net good in the world, I totally understand wanting to get more people into it. But it really seems like this show is concerned with people converting to Christianity, not as much so they can, be inspired by Jesus's teachings to be kinder to their fellow human being, but more so they can recognize that Christianity is the correct religion and get to go to heaven because they choose to be a part of it. Which is such a weirdly high stakes, ambitious goal for a TV show to have. It'd be like if the writers of, I don't know, The Big Bang Theory felt that they didn't just need to entertain audiences, but also convince them that Sheldon is God and to dedicate their lives to him. It's funny, a few people commented on my first video praising The Chosen that they could see me being converted to Christianity in the future. Like my enjoyment of the show was just the first step. And that was really interesting to hear people so completely misunderstand what's going on inside my head. Without being unnecessarily mean, I'll just say I am so far from believing in the divinity of Christ that it's gonna take a whole lot more than a pretty good TV show to convince me otherwise. But knowing that convincing me is ultimately this show's goal, it's both interesting and kind of unnerving to watch it try. For example, Jesus obviously preaches a lot in this show, and I didn't stop watching it or anything, but it felt like only 10% of the time were the sermons reiterating Jesus's more universal, agreeable teachings about like being critical of the wealthy and not judging your fellow man. Whereas the other 90% all pretty much boil down to, I'm literally God, so you should accept me as your Lord and Savior.
You will ask in my name, and no longer will you need me to ask the Father on your behalf. For the Father himself loves you. And you can ask him directly, because you have loved me and have believed that I came from God.
I have come.
And there's other off-putting moments too, like they take a weird amount of swings at pagans.
Obsessing over who is the greatest is something the pagans do.
Like in one episode, they go to a scary pagan temple and learn that the savage pagans have sex with goats.
Are those goats for sacrifice in their temple? No. Something much worse.
And it's like, why do you feel the need to warn people against ancient pagan religions? And I know there are still people today who would identify as pagan, but like not that many. And I just feel like the ancient pagan religions are this show's historically compliant stand-in for Islam, as a scary, bad religion you should be aware of and avoid. I could be wrong, but that's just the feeling I get. Also, I mentioned earlier how Thomas's fiance is murdered and Peter's wife experiences a miscarriage. And look, I don't want to at all undermine how tragic a miscarriage must be for a person to experience, especially with like the lack of fertility science in the time period this show is set. But if I was Thomas and my girlfriend got stabbed in front of me, and my buddy whose wife had a miscarriage comes over to tell me he knows exactly how I feel, I think I'd be a little perturbed. And this show kind of discussing them like they're exactly the same thing. Maybe I'm being too bad faith, but it feels like a subtle anti-abortion message. Especially since I have seen a video of Jesus' actor Jonathan Roumie speaking at an anti-abortion rally. Also, like, the creator of this show, Dallas Jenkins, is the son of Jerry Jenkins, a prolific author of novels about the rapture. You know, the apocalypse where all Christians are blasted up to heaven while everybody else has to stay here and fight demons or whatever. I think that's really the main thing that bothers me. Just knowing that a lot of the people behind this show are the kind of smug, likely conservative evangelical Christians who think they're doing such a noble thing by making this show. Because it's getting so many people to accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, who will all get to go to heaven because of them. Roumie recently really gave me the ick when he was responding to some fans saying they don't know if they can emotionally handle watching the Crucifixion next season.
I'd seen a lot of comments that people would say, oh, I can't, I'm not gonna watch season 6. I can't watch season 6, I can't take it. Well, to them I say, don't abandon Jesus in his hour of need just because it's hard for you. Because then you're doing what everybody else did.
Okay, calm down, dude. People are not abandoning Jesus in his hour of need if they choose to not finish watching your show. Like, would you say the same thing if they didn't make it to their local church's Easter play one year? You really think God cares? But it's a shame that myself and the people responsible for this show would probably hate each other, because it seems like they have a lot of fun making the show. At the end of each season, they show like alternate takes where Roumie, in character as Jesus, is mean.
Rude? Come on, Pat, forget it. We were gonna go to an inn and invite you, but it's fine. You just enjoy the dirt.
Enjoy your camping thing.
Yeah, camp away. Can you believe that guy?
Ridiculous.
Unbelievable.
And bloopers, both of which are genuinely funny.
How will you point him out without escalating tension?
I'm going to shoot him.
So all that being said, despite my increasingly mixed feelings about this show, I've watched 5 seasons of it. It's too late to step out of the boat at this point, especially since we all know that I'd sink immediately. I'm still gonna watch the last 2 seasons depicting the crucifixion and the resurrection, and probably make one more video about them to close this little trilogy out. But for now, I feel like I have to go watch the episode of Pawn Stars where Chumley overpays for a Secret Scope arcade machine. I can't abandon him in his hour of need just because it's hard for me, because then I'd be doing what everyone else did.